Welcome back. Our next guest is Dr. Manny Villafana. He's a giant in the medical device supply industry, revolutionizing the world of cardiac surgery, and has been wildly successful as an entrepreneur. He is also a proud Notre Dame parent. Thanks so much for joining us today, Manny. We appreciate you taking the time. And we're going to talk all about these interesting devices in front of us here in a second. But first and foremost, you're a Notre Dame dad.
Yes, my daughter Elisa, freshman, for some reason wants to get into science, and in fact is now a pre-med student here and loving it.
Well, and Dad might have had some influence in that, I am guessing.
Do the best you can, reach for the most you can, and she did. She reached for Notre Dame and she got in here. And
you've had kids who have studied at many different universities.
Yes.
What drew you and your daughter to consider Notre Dame for her?
I think you have to ask her. She wanted to go to what she felt was the best she reached for. She actually applied to 12 different universities, got into all 12, was accepted to all 12, but at the final day she said, I want to go to the University of Notre Dame. I want to be a domer, and she's here. She's fighting and struggling, but she's doing a good job.
And she's a freshman this year. Is that enough time for you to grow attached to the university?
Already,
yeah.
Already.
All right, well, I'm going to have to look, I apologize, I'm going to look down at my notes so that I don't mispronounce any of these. You're recognized worldwide in the field of cardiac surgery for the development of the St. Jude heart valve. What's it like knowing that people are walking around with something that you created, keeping them alive?
It is, it's a marvelous thing. I was just telling this morning to one of the staff members here at Notre Dame that on the first surgery, I remember so clearly that during the operation, they took out of this patient a diseased heart valve, okay? And they just took it out, boom, they put it in the garbage can. And all was left behind was a hole. And I realized that the product that they were going to put into her was something that I made and invented and was going to keep her alive. And that was the first implant of the St. Jude heart valve back in October of 1977.
So I'm sure there are many people watching right now who are incredibly grateful for the advances that you have made. And speaking of that, we're going to take a look. You brought some of these devices with you, and I want to first point out this right here, which is what?
This is a pacemaker made by the same person that probably made your, first of all, your light bulbs, your washing machine, your dryer, your stove. It was made by General Electric back in the 1970s. At that time, pacemakers were made simply to stimulate the heart, to keep it going, and they were usually about the size of a hockey puck, but they only lasted about 12 to 18 months. We later came up and developed the first lithium-powered pacemakers, which allowed us to make very, very small pacemakers like this, okay, and they would last 10, 20, 30 years. In fact, the very first pacemaker that I have is still running, and it's now 42 years old.
Wow. So you've seen a number of advances and helped to initiate a number of advances in the time you've been in the industry.
Right. We continue to do a lot of work in the cardiac area. Pacemakers, heart valves were things that we developed. We're now presently trying to develop a system where we might improve bypass surgery. We have a company called Kips Bay Medical, and named after the boys club that I grew up in. But we continue to work and try to improve the health and welfare of a lot of patients, including pediatric patients. And I know, Abby, that you do some work with children. And here is the world's smallest heart valve. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. It's the smallest heart valve. It's an ATS valve. One of my companies was ATS Medical and developed this very, very small valve, which can be used in a small person, a small lady, but primarily for a baby. The youngest patients that I remember having this valve was only 9 weeks old.
It is incredible. I work in, as you mentioned, a children's hospital, and to see the advances that have come about because of this technology and the lives that have been saved, it really is extraordinary. And that's me saying it from an outsider's perspective. I'm sure you've seen the look of gratitude on many an individual, many a parent's face over the years.
Sure. I remember very clearly when we were doing the first Lithium pacemakers, there was a young lady about 11 years old who was getting her 7th pacemakers. And remember, again, they were about the size of a hockey puck, and they would only last 12 to 18 months. So she was going to get her 7th pacemaker, and I looked at her and I said, believe it or not, I may not see you for another 10 years. And it's true. We'd lasted much more than 10 years, and didn't see her again, but she was well.
Well, Manny, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're so grateful to have you as part of the Notre Dame family and to share your knowledge with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
All right.